Hi friends, welcome you all back to our learning of Indian economy in an organic and organized way. Let's make Indian economy easy. Okay, so today I'm going to begin with the chapter of inflation. Okay, as you all know, my dear friends, inflation means, what is inflation? Price rise? No. Inflation is persistent price rise, not just price rise. Ordinary, what do you call? Ordinary price rise or incremental price rise. Incremental, okay? Price rise cannot be called as inflation. Inflation is a condition in economy when the prices are rising persistently. It's been rising all the way. So when the average price of all goods and services or most goods and services rise persistently, you call it as, what do you call it as? Inflation. Okay. Now, having said that, what are the types of inflation? Let's get into the different types of inflation. But before that, my dear friends, one thing let's know: why inflation is bad, why inflation is not good for economy. Because as you know, when the prices keep growing, when the prices keep rising considerably, and when the sources of income is constrained or limited, or the sources of income are predefined, especially in the salaried groups or in the lower, what do you call, the economically people at the lower strata, they tend to suffer the most out of inflation, my dear friends. So inflation can affect the socio-economic fabric of the country. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? And even inflation dampens investment. People who want to save, people who want to invest may be discouraged because the returns that they get may be very meager. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friend? So a host of macroeconomic problems will creep in, like the the exchange rate stability may be affected over a period of time. All this how inflation affects so many other variables in macroeconomics, as and when we learn as and when we get into balance of payments, foreign trade and all that, we'll understand in greater detail, my dear friends. So having said this, why inflation is bad? Among many reasons, inflation is bad because it hurts the poor the most, because they are the ones who already have less money, or they are the ones who have fixed source of income, or they are the ones who have meager sources of income. And if the prices are rising beyond a certain threshold, prices are rising disproportionately, it's the poor in the country who gets hurt the most. Unfortunately, in a developing economy like India, it's the poor who makes the most. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? Which means the number of poor are way higher compared to a small minority number of rich or wealthy. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friend? So the poor is going to be hurt the most by inflation. The next category of people who are going to be affected by inflation is the middle class, the salaried class. Rich and wealthy may not be affected as much as these groups of people, but inflation nevertheless has in it something that is undesirable for all groups, all classes of people, my dear friends. Having said this all, let us quickly look into different types of inflation. We use so many words along with inflation, my dear friend. Let's quickly look into what each of these words means. Fair enough. Number one, creeping inflation. Now, is creeping, what do you understand by the term creep? Very slow, imperceptible movement is called creep. Slowly, imperceptibly, like no one knows. When you move, you call it as creeping inflation. Perfect? Is creeping inflation good or bad, my dear friends? Obviously, good. Because a slight amount of price increase is good for the businesses, my dear friends. There is economic growth that contributes to genuine economic growth. In fact, this slight amount of price increase, when it is happening year after year, slight amount of price increase, when it is happening year after year, what I'm talking about is the rate of increase. If it is very less, let's say by 1%, 2%, okay, maximum till 4%, when the prices are rising, it leads to a very desirable condition called price stability in the economy, which means even though there is price rise, people don't get to feel it because it doesn't hurt them. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? On one hand, the consumers don't get adversely affected by it, and the producers or the sellers tend to benefit out of it, my dear friends. Are you connecting? And the overall growth, the overall economic growth is secured out of it. Get that point? So that's what you call as creeping inflation. What is creeping inflation? An inflation that is between 1 to 4%, minimum 1, maximum 4%, okay? And it's happening year after year, which is actually leading to a good condition in economy called price stability that benefits everyone. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Creeping inflation. Now, if creeping inflation is not maintained, look at here, I'm not using the word controlled, I'm not using the word regulate, I'm not even using the word ameliorate, I'm using the word maintained, which means what? If it is till 4%, see to that it's not going beyond that. Manage it in such a way that it's below 4. If you don't manage it in a way that it is below 4, then you enter a condition called trotting inflation. What is it? Trotting, Trotting. Now, what happens with the trotting inflation, my dear friends? Prices go up. There is now the territory of inflation that has started to hurt the poor. Okay? And there are many things that is out of the affordability range of the poor. So, trotting inflation, this is what it means. If trotting inflation is not managed, if it is not suppressed, if you don't rein it in, then it leads to a condition called galloping inflation. What do you call it? Galloping. You're no longer creeping, you're no longer trotting, you're galloping now. The inflation is now increasing at a faster, higher rate. Okay, galloping inflation, my dear friends, not only hurts the poor like the trotting inflation, it starts to burn the pockets of the middle class as well. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? In galloping inflation, even the middle class finds a lot of goods and services that were in its affordability range unaffordable now, inaccessible now, mainly because of the price increase. That is what you call as galloping inflation. Gallop. If galloping inflation is not controlled, see, now I've started to use words like control. If it is not controlled and if the creeping or trotting conditions are not restored, then it becomes a case called runaway inflation. What do you call it as? What do you call it as? Runaway inflation. In runaway inflation, almost all categories of people get to be hurt. Slowly the money is losing its value. The goods and services that it can buy is very less. Are you connecting? The currency is actually losing its value. The domestic currency, my dear friends, in runaway inflation, which when not suppressed can lead to a condition called hyperinflation. Now, hyperinflation is a very, very bad condition for any economy to be in. Because once you are in hyperinflation, the inflation is in a range of 20 to 30% rise or even higher, my dear friends. Now, in such a scenario, the entire macroeconomic stability is lost. Your currency loses its value. The foreign trade gets affected. The balance of trade is is disproportionately negative in your side. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? Most of the things are totally in unaffordable range. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? Hyperinflation. Okay. Why do you feel the hyperinflation happens, my dear friends, in first place? One of the reasons responsible for hyperinflation is when the government that is responsible to maintain the macroeconomic stability spends too populistically. If there is no fiscal discipline, if there is no prudent financial management by the government of the day, reckless fiscal spending, if it does by borrowing a lot, my dear friends, very strong possibility of hyperinflation setting in. Are you connecting to? Hyperinflation can also set in when a country is at wars. So, a lot of your expenditure is being made on defense and military supplies and all that, my dear friends. That time also, hyperinflation can set in. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? So, a host of reasons can be responsible for hyperinflation, but once you are not able to control hyperinflation, you enter a very, very undesirable state of economy, which is called, what do you call it as? Think about it. Monetary collapse. Monetary collapse. Your currency completely loses its value. It can't buy now. The economy will have to forcefully switch to some other stable currency for a time frame till your currency gets back its value to whatever extent it can. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? Perfect. Okay. Having said this, my dear friends, so you understood now what is creeping inflation, how it becomes trotting, and from trotting to, say it, after trotting, galloping. Very good. Galloping to runaway inflation, runaway to superb hyperinflation, and hyperinflation when not controlled becomes monetary collapse. Okay, superb, my dear friends, fantastic. Now, having said this, you also come across terms like headline inflation and core inflation, correct? The headline inflation, people say headline inflation is 6.5. What is headline inflation? This is the official inflation of the entire economy. It's called headline inflation because in the newspaper headlines, this is what you see as the inflation. Your newspapers, your news channels keep saying that the inflation has become 8 point so much, the inflation has become 6.5%. No, this is actually headline inflation. This is the official inflation that is experienced throughout, that's experienced across the economy, taking into consideration the price movements of all the goods and services that is there in the economy. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friend? That's the headline inflation. Okay. What is core inflation? In the core inflation, you're not taking into consideration the price movements of those goods whose prices are very, very volatile. Now they're volatile. See, there are some goods, like for example, your food, fuel, which keeps hovering, whose prices have large scale movements, my dear friends. Your mom, you would have heard over your dinner, your mom complaining, tomato has become 80 rupees per kg. It was just 20 2 weeks ago. See, look at the variation that can come about in the prices of your food. You would have heard people saying, only last week the petrol rate was 76 rupees per liter. Now it has become 96 rupees, correct? So food, fuel, these prices, they vary a lot. So when you are actually trying to understand what is the inflation in the economy, you should not take into consideration the prices of these goods which vary too much, my dear friends, because it doesn't give you the correct picture of the inflation in the economy. See, who is responsible who is primarily responsible to control the inflation? The central bank of the country. So in our case, RBI, as you know, Reserve Bank of India. Now, Reserve Bank of India should look into demand side. What is the demand for credit and what is the supply of credit? And by that, it should, base its monetary policy. When it is trying to combat inflation, when it is trying to address inflation, it should look into the demand side of inflation. If it looks into the prices movements of these volatile, if it looks into the volatility of prices, if it looks into the price movements of these goods whose prices are too volatile, this volatility is coming because of supply shocks. So RBI cannot do anything about it. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? If somebody is hoarding the goods, you know what is hoarding, right? And if somebody is like stocking the goods to release it at a later date, or if a group of people are cartelizing something, or there is some inefficiency in the supply chain, what will RBI do about it? Correct? And then these kind of things will have to be addressed largely by the government of the day. What RBI can do with reference to inflation is to look at the demand side. What is the demand for the credit in the economy? How far the financial institutions in the economy are trying to stand up to that expectations. Correct, my dear friends? Therefore, you know now, my dear friends, headline inflation is the official rate of inflation announced by the government, taking into consideration the price movements of all goods, irrespective of whether some of the goods have too much of price volatility and all that. All goods and services. Core inflation, you're removing those goods and services whose prices are very volatile, and you're looking at the core or the underlying inflation, which will be actually looked at by the central bank. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Hopefully you understood. Perfect. If you didn't, you please rewind this, watch it again, you will definitely understand, my dear friends. So, headline inflation, core inflation. Now let me explain to you what is open inflation and suppressed inflation. Open inflation is something like this. There is inflation. Prices are rising. If the government of the day is just looking at it, waiting for the prices to come down by itself and not doing much, okay, then it's a case of open inflation. For example, like I'm a farmer. Take an example that I'm a farmer. I want to begin my agricultural activity. It is sowing season. I need fertilizers. I need pesticides. All this, if it is coming to me at subsidized rates, I benefit. Now there is inflation, and because of which the prices of all these goods are very high. If the government of the day is doing nothing about it, okay, then most of these things may be not in the range of my affordability. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Now, here is a case of open inflation. Open inflation. Inflation is happening and the government is not responding. It's just allowing the prices to come down by itself, dictated by the market forces. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? In contrast to that, what is suppressed inflation? Suppressed, when the government intervenes. And look at here, I use the word suppressed because this is only a temporary measure by the government to rein in the inflation. Government may take away government may discontinue these measures once the inflation is reined in. Once the inflation is controlled, these temporary measures that the government would have taken, it may not continue with them. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Perfect. So, open inflation, suppressed inflation, no government intervention or very negligibly less government intervention, active government, proactive government intervention in reining in the inflation. Perfect, my dear friends. What do you understand by disinflation disinflation is the right term, right word, my dear friends. When there is decrease in the rate of growth of inflation. Look at here, my dear friend. This is very, very important. Disinflation is not opposite of inflation. Opposite of inflation is deflation, which I'm going to explain to you next. Disinflation means when the rate of growth of prices decreases. See, the price in itself is not decreasing. The price is still increasing. But the rate of growth of price is decreasing. Tomato was 20 rupees. Last week it became 40 rupees. This week it has become 60 rupees. But next week, because of the measures taken by government or the central bank, next week what is 60 today becomes 70 instead of 80. Is a case of disinflation. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? So, rate of growth of prices comes down. That is disinflation. Got that, my dear friends? Superb. What is deflation? Deflation is a case where the prices are continuously coming down. Got that now? What I'm trying to tell you? Prices are continuously coming down. If the price has not grown beyond 0%, see, if let us say the price of something was 20 rupees and if it has become 19 or less than 20 by any measure, my dear friends, instead of becoming 21 or 22, you have a case of deflation. The prices are decreasing. Are you connecting to what I'm trying? What is reflation? After a brief spell of stagnation of prices or coming down, if it's again going up, you call it as reflation. What do you understand by stagflation? Stagflation is a combination of two words, my dear friends. Stagnation and inflation. Stagnation and inflation. This is a very peculiar condition, very unfortunate, peculiar condition that will be experienced by any economy, because on one hand you have inflation, on another hand you also have rising unemployment. Okay, this happens. See, the best example is in the 1970s. The United States of America was experiencing lot of degrowth, lot of unemployment problems and all that. Adding to that, there was also inflation because of the oil shocks in the 1970s. Okay, so rarely this happens. But you generally know when inflation is high, it would have happened because of rising employment levels. Unemployment would have got decreased. That's why people would have had more personal disposable income with them, and it would have contributed to what you call as the demand push inflation, my dear friends. Got that? I'm trying to tell you. Perfect. So, stagflation means stagnation plus inflation. There is no growth, no employment. So unemployment conditions are looming at large. Adding to that, you have inflationary conditions as well. Together, in combination, it's called stagflation. Hopefully, I helped you come into terms with different types of inflation, my dear friends. Okay, just try to sit down after you watch this class entirely. Sit down and try to recall all the definitions of different types of inflations that I just discussed with you, my dear friends. Thank you all so much. Let me see you in my next class. Thank you.